Hey, Crypto Hotep here with another video, but this is going to be a little bit different video. So, whether you follow me or not, I have different playlists, one investing playlist and then a trading playlist, and they revolve around assets, charts, charting, technical analysis, fundamental analysis when you're looking at stocks and companies and such. But this will go under a playlist just probably called Thoughts or Market Thoughts. And I'm going to try to keep it so we're not looking at charts, and it's going to be based around assets, asset thought process for the investor that maybe is not familiar with charts, doesn't want to get familiar with charts, and just kind of wants to know thoughts about markets, and assets as a whole. And this video, the first video, is going to relate to Bitcoin, and we may have several videos after that with Bitcoin and just kind of tracking Bitcoin news, investing in the assets, very similar to Bitcoin and not. But I wanted to make the first video about Bitcoin, to showcase the reason why I feel so strongly with Bitcoin. Again, if you follow me, you know that I do trade, keyword there, trade altcoins in addition to holding Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is on another level than the altcoins that I get in and get out of trades on a regular basis. Um, my story with Bitcoin, it is about, I want to say, 5 years old now, and I learned about Bitcoin during 2020. I want to say it was like maybe late 2019 actually, and it a big shout out to Hotep Jesus and Uncle Hotep and their podcast Hotep's Been Told You, just because they were one of the first who said Bitcoin on a podcast, and also said it in a way that I could understand it, and it piqued my curiosity. And then I proceeded to use YouTube and Twitter, and I came across a Crypto Casey video that I'll never forget. It. I was shoveling snow and I plugged my earbuds in and I just listened to the video as I shoveled snow, and that was kind of the mind-blowing experience about learning about Bitcoin, understanding the financials behind Bitcoin and that thought process, and understanding the true value, which is almost priceless, if you will, of Bitcoin. And the big premise about Bitcoin, for, if you're watching this video and maybe you're not, maybe you're on the fence with Bitcoin, is the fact is the world currency, which is, or the world's reserve currency, which is USD, United States dollar, can be printed out of thin air at a drop of a hat, right? We can print money as it goes, and this was seen, during the 2020 occurrence that we shall not speak of. So we found that money was injected into the markets, and thus when you have a big supply of something, usually that value goes down. And again, it also taught me more about, kind of going back to high school economics, about supply and demand, right? You have a low supply of something, or a low demand of something, then your price will go down. If you have a high supply of something, that price will go down as well. If you have a high demand of something, then that price will go up. And if you have a low supply of something, that price will go up. So with our money being injected, just creating fictitious dollars that aren't backed by anything, it also decreased the purchasing power of the United States dollar as well. And that's what's being shown on this chart here. Now, before we go any further, this is not financial advice. Do your own due diligence, research Bitcoin before you do anything. But if we look at the United States dollar over time, it has just decreased its purchasing power year over year. And I'll provide a couple examples for you to see this, but understanding this also helps you understand Bitcoin and the big picture of the financial quote unquote industry, if you will. So several things happened in the United States dollar history. So we go to this kind of chart here, which showcases the major events of the United States dollar, from the stock market crash that plunged the United States into the Great Depression in 1929, to gold being possessed from the government, or being possessed by the government from regular folks like you and I. So there was a point where everybody had gold, potentially had gold, but the government labeled it as criminal to hold gold, and then they proceeded to grab everybody's gold because of this. So, that was one thing. The end of the Korean War, escalation of the Vietnam War, and then probably the biggest item was in 1971, the end of the Gold Standard Act. And basically, the United States dollar currently is not backed by anything. It's just backed by paper, if you will. It's not backed by a thing. And the reason I say this is because it used to be backed. So, again, before 1971, the United States dollar was backed by gold. And it was backed by the amount of gold that the United States had. So in 1971, when we ended that gold standard, we removed that United States backing to gold, and that proceeded to then plunge the United States dollar deeper into this decreased value that we see. So, as we mentioned before, there was another stock market crash in 1987. Here we have a global financial crash of 2008, and then we all know what happened in 2020. But as you can see, this is the purchasing power of the dollar. In 1913, the purchasing power of a dollar was $26.14. That is crazy now, just to think of that, right? And what could you buy? You could buy 30 chocolate bars with that amount. Fast forward all the way to 2020, for $1, you can buy one McDonald's coffee, and you may not even be able to buy that right now, if we're being truthful. The other way you can look at this is McDonald's, right? So McDonald's inflation from 2014 to 2024, this is crazy as well. So if you look at McDonald's, so for instance, we looked at $1, right? So the McChicken in 2014 was $1. So if you had $1, you could get a McChicken. I mean, substantially with tax, it'd be 105 if, depending on the state you're in. But kind of bear with me here. If you had $1, you could get a McChicken. Nowadays, in 2024 and beyond, with $1, you can't buy really anything at McDonald's. So again, that dollar's purchasing power is getting less and less. So the reason why Bitcoin made sense is because of a couple things. One thing is, with Bitcoin, there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be produced, ever. Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator, the developer of Bitcoin, has just made it so because of the code that is in Bitcoin that creates, right? So it can't be duplicated. It can be replicated by another crypto, but that's not Bitcoin. Okay. So that's one thing that stuck out to me. So there's only 21 million. It can't be produced like how the United States dollar is produced, where it's produced out of thin air. Whenever you put the printers on, you can generate several billions of dollars and inject it into the market. You can't do that with Bitcoin. The only thing you can really do with Bitcoin is buy it and sell it and hold it. You can't produce any more of it. So what does that mean exactly? Because what's to say that the supply everything just stays in circulation? Well, another thing happens in Bitcoin. Every 4 years, there's a halving event, which the halving event awards miners, which miners are actually people who mine Bitcoin. The concept is very similar to mining for gold. So when you mine Bitcoin, you're using your computer to solve a very complex math problem, because again, we're dealing with coding and computer language. So you're using supercomputers to solve complex problems that secure each transaction on Bitcoin's blockchain. Okay. So to reward these miners, every 4 years there's a halving event to reward a very, very lucky miner a block. A block, which is a block is a list of transactions that Bitcoin records, because everything is recorded on the blockchain that is public knowledge, so you can see everything. So the miners actually awarded a block and rewarded Bitcoin for his or her hard work at mining this Bitcoin. So we don't want to get complicated with that at all, but just know that when you're every halving, this mining block reward gets cut in half. So and the reason it gets cut in half is because, again, the supply of Bitcoin is reducing. So this reduces it even further. Now, why do I keep saying that? Well, because when you reduce something, again, we bring it back to economics, you reduce the supply, then the demand and the price goes up. So as we've seen before, when something is low in supply and people want it and there's a high demand for it, price goes up. And I say that because a lot of people say, well, Bitcoin's not backed by anything. Bitcoin, it doesn't have real value. It does have real value to the people that have it really valued. And as of right now, institutions, government agencies, further adoption of Bitcoin is present. There are government agencies that are buying Bitcoin in the form of a treasury because they put it on the same pedestal as gold itself. So, when you're thinking about investing, I would suggest looking into Bitcoin and just understanding that concept of Bitcoin in terms, maybe you don't understand the whole block mining concept, supercomputers and all of that, that's completely fine. But understand the scarcity of it, and understand that with the scarcity of Bitcoin and the fact that more people are buying Bitcoin, not selling it, and the ability for you to not only buy Bitcoin, but potentially in the future borrow against it to help generate wealth, then everything will come full circle. One thing that I will suggest is this book here, The Bitcoin Standard by Safdien Ammous. The Bitcoin Standard, I'm currently reading this, and this is a very good book because it not only talks about Bitcoin, it talks about currency in general. So, it can get very heavy, it can get very boring at times because it discusses the history, but it's good. It's honestly good to hear that history and understand it, because then that way it puts Bitcoin into that light as well. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Bitcoin. I'll do more videos on Bitcoin, like how to buy Bitcoin, what I'm doing currently with Bitcoin, especially when we're speaking about like how I trade altcoins and all of that, and where Bitcoin is in my portfolio and how I expect to use it in the upcoming years to come, and how I'm trying to protect my family's generational wealth with it as well. But all in all, I think Bitcoin is a fantastic asset. I think it's very easy to understand, and it actually brings to light the true manipulation of our money that we have currently. And it brings to light that there's better things out there, such as Bitcoin. So, as always, guys, thank you for listening. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what the next video should be. It's just my thoughts, no charts, just me talking. But if it's helpful, again, like, subscribe, comment, and reshare. As always, guys, thank you and happy investing or trading.